Hey everyone, welcome to another G News update. Well, I'm down at the Saturday morning markets on Waiheke Island on Belgium Street, and everyone's just kind of closing up now. But let's take a little walk through some of the happenings here while we just talk about some of the things that have happened in the last 24 hours in the news. Well, one of the things that you'll probably all be aware of is that last night Tova O'Brien appeared on 3 News and kind of gave her summary of what had happened during Scrutiny Week in Parliament this week. And it was a bit predictable, really. One of the things Tova said was Greg Fleming was just such a great guy because he'd admitted that slashing Maori broadcasting by 25% was probably like catastrophic and a bad thing. And that maybe he'd actually have a word to Christopher Luxicon, who had repeatedly told us now for about 3 or 4 years that he was going to learn Te Reo, but of course he was full of shit and had no intention of doing so. But the bigger question that Tova didn't answer in the first place was, why was it the case that Maori broadcasting was being slashed by 25% in the first place? I mean, what kind of government is on such a crusade to shut down Maori voice and Maori opinion that it would actually even contemplate such a move? And what we find is that this is just a consistent problem. Here's some music playing in the background. Isn't that great? People dancing. It's just pretty awesome here at Waiheke, isn't it? Anyway, so Greg Fleming was a hero because he kind of agreed that it would be catastrophic to cut funds. Not that anything will change or that he's done anything tangible. Then Tova was talking about some of the other things in Scrutiny Week, but I don't think she mentioned health and the way in which Casey Costello had basically found it quite complex decision, really, whether or not to allow Big Tobacco to peddle these, kind of nicotine replacement technologies and basically go about her way. And really, it was quite simple, There's an evidence base that says that this could be as harmful or worse than even smoking, then just don't do it. So that didn't get mentioned by Tova at all either, did it? And what we were all expecting Tova to do, she did in the end, and that was to talk about the Finance and Expenditure Committee meeting where she praised Chloe basically for kind of getting out of the Nicola Willis, a confession that basically, we have no intention of paying any money overseas in order to meet our Paris Accord national commitments, determined commitments, and so we won't be paying any money out. At the same time, however, we're doing nothing to lower any of our emissions, and this has been in the news all week about this incoherent position that the government has taken on climate change, which is really just kicking the can down the road, making it worse and undermining all countries, actually. All countries internationally are being undermined by New Zealand. And of course, there's been talk about how this has bothered our trade partners who are now talking behind the scenes while the government denies everything about, well, how backsliding New Zealand has been on climate change recently. So then Tova got down to the meat of it all. And you know what that was? Well, that was basically the idea, and she used this language, that 3 senior Labour MPs had bludgeoned the poor, perfect finance minister who was trying to explain something about how they were wrong because this table was wrong. And what Tova objected to was Labour asking repeatedly for an answer that they didn't get. What table are you referring to in what document? And apparently that's not allowed. That's very, very bad behaviour. You're not allowed to ask any questions of the Finance Minister, according to Tova O'Brien. Unlike Tova O'Brien, who typically starts off, when there's a pandemic on, asking someone like Sir Ashley Bloomfield if he'll resign because it took another 30 minutes or something to get some result out, which was damn quick, really, by many standards. But, will you guarantee things? Will you resign? All that kind of jugular talk, guttery sort of gotcha journalism from Tova on the one hand, but if 3 Labour MPs say, look, what table is the Finance Minister referring to? Well, that's bludgeoning, and it's just really bad, and it's really bad for them. So one must never, ever ask a National Party Finance Minister a question. Now, as you know, that all boiled down to something rather funny because basically all Willis had been doing was trying to deny that she'd underinvested in 2024 and 2025 and that the accounts showed that for a fact. And she's saying, well, look, I've been through this all with Arana Williams on the 8th of October, where she just basically brushed this off as well and didn't get down to the point. What she's been saying is we've got this planned 4-year future investment, but during that gap, New Zealand's economy slumped, and Willis didn't want to cover that. And Tova O'Brien, as a senior political correspondent or political editor for 3, should know better than to try and cover this up on behalf of a neoliberal government. And that's what I think we're seeing from Tova O'Brien. She's done nothing for anybody in terms of holding a government to account for the fact that it helped tank and extend this recession. So bad marks for Tova, big negatives. Don't keep doing it, Tova. Come on, pull up your socks and stop being so subjective and touchy and sensitive when you yourself carry on this way. So what else is in the news? Well, because Dame Jacinda is such a hit and has actually been doing great things in terms of her publicity anyway over in the UK. We've seen her appear on the Graham Norton show overnight, and that news is just filtering through. And as you know, this will be on TVNZ on the 12th of December. But those who are tuned in may watch this sooner. And apparently it looks like they had a great time. But anyway, I'm kind of in the habit now of kind of pointing out the outrageous, superficial, small, tiny group of people who are basically haters, hate anything said by Jacinda. And many people are now saying to me, oh, look, it's really, really good that there's kind of a safe space where I can be myself and I can talk about someone that's done a good job and deserves full credit. And I think that's good that space now exists, because this kind of foreign interference of all these hater bots that can't spell is a bad thing for New Zealand. And we just need to create a space on social media where that can actually happen. Wow. Yes. The hater bots. I've had to block a few this morning, but not too many. And it's kind of getting more and more comfortable on G News now. So, what else has happened? Well, basically, people are giving me advice all the time not to even talk about them, because let's just focus on the good things. And really, the good things are, kindness, empathy, being strong, being courageous, speaking up, pushing back on hater bots, for example. So, I'm probably not going to be edited from the comments section, if you like, in terms of what I can talk about. And that brings me to polls. Well, as you know, there's been a Roy Morgan poll, and if you come out and look at Roy Morgan over the last half a dozen polls, they're kind of an outlier in New Zealand polling. They're not a polling company that's actually accredited by the Research Association of New Zealand for using good methods. And so they tend to kind of like have a lot of sway and kinks and stuff like that into their sampling. And they've said that National in front many, many times in the last 6 times that all the other polls said something else. And as you know, one poll versus a trend is the kind of way to go. You've got to look at the trend, not the one poll. So what we're seeing in New Zealand at the moment is a whole bunch of fairly desperate people that support the right wing clinging to this Roy Morgan poll, but not being aware that it's actually a bit shonky and it's completely out of whack, and it's really quite inaccurate, not representing the true picture. However, we do have the polls coming up next week, the Taxpayers Union poll. That's the shop there where I would buy a new keyboard, but it's actually closed. And so I might have to do it online. So we've got the Taxpayers Union poll, which could be about 3% out, and we've got TVNZ Varian polls. And once again, TVNZ Varian's polls are pretty much got a wacko sample that tends to favour the coalition government by about 2 or 3%, and keeps putting them well above the trend line. So I wouldn't take anything that Mikey has to say about her poll with too much seriousness this week when it comes out. I'm picking that'll be on Monday night. And then there'll be extended coverage about some of the issues like the CGT and, the rates capping or something like that will come out of that poll. And we'll all talk about that before Christmas, before we all wrap up. Now, as it turns out, the Ha'i food last year was really, really shockingly bad. And that comes out on the 16th of December. So that's the half-yearly economic update. And that'll just show us what Treasury thinks it's got on the books and what's coming up, and whether the Obergall X figures are any better, whether the surplus has been pushed out further, how we're going. We know GDP is pretty much been useless this year, and that this is the year of growth, but it hasn't been, has it? It's been a year of recession. Remember that June quarter when it was 0.9% and everyone was shocked out of their brain? Well, yeah, since that time, and since stealing all that pay equity, well, National have gone down the drain, haven't they? And that's to be expected because really New Zealand is slowly becoming a rich person's playground that the poor people just can't afford to live here. You know, these supermarket prices like here are just out of the gate, aren't they? And so are your power bills and the rates, and the water bills are coming, they're going to explode. And nothing that this national government has done has actually helped you or me or anyone else that's kind of struggling or on the breadline. So why should we continue to vote for them? And that's the media's challenge. Now, the last topic I'd like to talk about before I get back to the G News mobile down here in the Countdown Supermarket car park is the, just got a bunch of people with some stuff going by there. But yeah, we basically pretty much looked at Scrutiny Week there, and we found the government a bit wanting when it came to being able to answer questions about things like education and the curriculum, and just the way in which it had gone about this, just deciding that it was going to remove treaty obligations from school boards. I mean, that wasn't voted for, was it? There was no mandate for that. The rates capping was the same. There was no mandate for that. The green shoots kind of thing, you know, that's all just bollocks. We know that Chris Luxon is basically bullshitting us when it comes to saying that business confidence is an indicator of some kind of improvement in the economy when it's completely decoupled. And the same goes for tourism, same goes for retail. You know, Sonny Korshell having a $3,200 lunch and, you know, being on 200 grand. What's he actually done to improve anything in retail or security or safety? Bugger all. So, you know, the results are bad, and this is the same as what happened last year. So I wrote about how this is Groundhog Day now. This is the same result that we got last year, isn't it? Anyway, isn't it great that Dame Jacinda is doing so well, that the hater bots are kind of on the run, that the National Party are basically panicking down the tubes, and that Labour are kind of doing this thing where they're saying, hey, look, you count. It's not just for the rich, it's for everybody. We're not going to look outwards and just foreign investors come in and save us. We're going to do some of this ourselves. We're going to invest in ourselves with the Future Fund. We're not going to sell off state assets like the Treasury. And we're not going to really necessarily just buy into things, you know, like at the moment you've got Ruth Richardson pushing the Taxpayers Union to create this kind of impression that Nicola Willis is somehow a moderate after 9,500 public servants working in the wider public sector lost their jobs. Now, the National Party will say, oh, look, the number's a lot smaller than that if you just look at the core public sector and situations that were made vacant that just weren't filled. So, because, you know, the people had already lost the job and we just didn't fill it. But when you look at things like the proportion of the workforce versus the size of the public sector, that's remained fairly constant for quite a number of years. Craig Rennie will tell you that. It's sort of always hovering around 20%, just up or down 20%. So, yeah, there's something like 63,000 people, full-time employees working in the government. And, you know, it hasn't changed too much. That's really bothering the ideologues at the ACT Party and their close association with the Taxpayers Union. The last thing I'd like to comment on is that Noam Chomsky always used to point this out, that the range of opinion of topics, you know, where it's acceptable exists between this very narrow band in, you know, public mainstream media, and you don't get to talk outside that. So, you know, when we talk about debt and we talk about a better, more sophisticated conversation about debt, we're not seeing that in any of our newspapers, are we? We don't get coverage about, you know, debt ceilings, the real risks from Treasury or beyond Treasury, and, you know, how much we could sustain as a population that needs to catch up because it's underinvested because of this neoliberal Ruth Richardson and Nicola Willis austerity when they cut and slash jobs. So we saw 20,000 jobs in the construction sector go at that slump time, didn't we? And that's the stuff that Tova O'Brien should have been aware of, but wasn't, as she castigated Labour for actually trying to find out what table Nicola Willis was referring to. That's terrible from Tova. Don't let Tova get away with this. Keep your eyes open, be vigilant. Talk to you all again soon. Have a great day.
Welcome to G News, the good news.